everybody, and welcome to Ladies of the PGS. I am your host, Art, and of course, we have with us today Lorena Creole. Lorena, how are you?
I'm doing great, doing good, doing wonderful, and as always, glad to kick off the week here with you on Ladies of the PGS.
Absolutely great having you here, Lorena, as always. Lorena, what a week this has been. This was the week that it was an amazing opportunity for so many Star Wars fans to be in the movie theater. That's right. I'm talking
Mm,
about this fan event, this
mm-hmm.
mid-season fan event that a bunch of lucky people got to go to see this episode in the movie theater. Gee, I would have paid money for this if they had offered this, Lorraine. I sure would have showed up at the theater, hoping to get into that. But alas, I did not go. But a lot of people went to this thing, and apparently it was so amazing. I mean, to be honest with you, I would give anything to be able to see some of these episodes on the big screen. And I think, honestly, Lorraine, I think some of these episodes that we've been seeing in the Ahsoka series are intended to be seen on a big screen with some of these
Interesting.
yeah, lightsaber fights that we're seeing, certainly Sith Daddy scenes that you and I love so much. That must have looked remarkable on a big screen. Can you imagine the platform when Balin is fighting against Ahsoka on that platform? What that will look
Mm,
like. But we have to just imagine it because only a few lucky people actually got a chance to go ahead and see that episode on the big screen. But of course,
mm-hmm.
Lorena, we're talking about episode 5, The Shadow Warrior. And certainly, this was right after we were given that bombshell in episode 4 of seeing Anakin Skywalker. Now, Lorena, I know that you on your channel, you just
Mm-hmm.
celebrated 6,000 subscribers on your channel, which is fantastic. And you
Thank you.
also do these incredible members only views of the Ahsoka series. So you're watching these live when it comes out.
Yes.
And of course, here's kind of just a shot of Anakin, I'm assuming here in this in sort of the cloudy like smoky view. Um
Mm-hmm.
what were some of your thoughts about this episode? It got a pretty high rating. A lot of people liked it. What were some of your thoughts and concerns as you were watching this episode?
Hmm. Let me preface this by saying that it's obvious that there were certain scenes that were put into this particular episode for folks who watched Rebels and who watched the Clone Wars. I was not one of those people, so that's the perspective that I'm coming from with this one. Um, I just didn't feel that Ahsoka did enough. I didn't feel as if the whole well, first of all, the whole thing with the world between worlds. So, as a diehard Star Wars movie fan, I looked at that, and for some reason, all I thought was about like Avengers Endgame, pretty much when I saw it. But the Soul Stone scene, and Ahsoka goes off the side and everything, and wakes up here. And I'm just like, I've seen this before. So for me, as a movie fan, the world between worlds thing is like a non-issue. I'm like, I don't know what it is. Why is it here? You kind of like lost me. But if you are into Rebels and you watch Clone Wars, you pretty much would know what this is. But I didn't. The saber battle itself was okay. Um but in the end, it just all seemed like it was all in her head, which for me, I'm just like, okay, well, why are you going to bring Anakin, back for that? And if this is an allegory for the cave in Dagobah, I don't see that because there wasn't, this I feel drawn, and the challenge, put away your weapon, you won't need it. Well, what's in there? Only what you take with you. It's like you didn't get that ominous feeling with that. So that's kind of how I felt like it. It just was. It seemed anticlimactic to find out that this was just only really a battle in her head. So yeah, that was kind of anticlimactic. for me. But visually, the episode looked good, but as a movie fan, it just wasn't enough to like keep my interest for, personal interest. I review this stuff, so I gotta watch it. It's only fair that that I watch it with the caveat of this is made for a certain segment of the Star Wars fandom. Contrasting case in point, while I'm not a fan of Andor that much because I feel the pacing was way too slow in the beginning, I could watch it without watching anything else except the movies and completely get it.
Yeah, that's one good point, and I think a lot of people did mention that, and this was a concern since the beginning of the series that, if you didn't watch Rebels or the Clone Wars, which and I'm not going to say what percentage of fans that is, but it's probably a lot because millions of people are watching these shows on Disney Plus, and a lot of kids are watching it who may not have even seen all of those episodes yet. So, perhaps even a good portion, maybe more than half of the people watching it, normies even, who don't know anything about these previous episodes and encounters. So and I agree with you, Lorena, that they put a spectacular effort into putting together episodes 4 and 5. And I think certainly I've never really seen a live action adaptation of, let's say, the Clone Wars or any kind of
Mhm.
Rebels animation that looks this good. This is, the shot I'm showing now, of course, is actually Hayden Christensen, the real Anakin Skywalker that we know, let's say, from the prequels, if you will. And of course, the young girl who plays Gamora, she's played a number of different roles. She plays a
Mhm.
young Ahsoka. And as somebody who's watched the Clone Wars a bazillion times, who's watched Rebels a bazillion times, when I saw the event advertised as a fan event, I thought to myself, oh, this is interesting. I've never really seen very much like this before. A fan event,
Mhm.
what is that? And I had to kind of click into it, and I noticed it was, on limited screens, only 10. And
Mhm.
you could see this event. And certainly what I saw this episode was a showcase of Dave Filoni showing Ahsoka to individuals who really didn't know anything about her. And, I think that when you do see these scenes, the first question I think a lot of people would say is, what's going on? Where are we? What's going on? It does require explanation, but it looks incredible. Like the look of it, the effort that was put in to make it look authentic, the effort that was put
Mhm.
in it to make this look like, the most incredible version of those animated series was really done so well. We even got to see different famous conflicts that they were in together, for example, or not even together, but let's just say throughout their careers as soldiers, which is how Ahsoka spent much of her early days being Anakin's Padawan along with him on these different missions, which are detailed in the Clone Wars. We get incredible detail, Lorena, years and years of explaining what's going on and why the Empire, was able to kind of uh, get into power and how these clones came about. There's a huge amount of explanation. In fact, people have said that the Clone Wars almost made the sequels seem more legitimate, more explanation as to why the sequels were the way they were. You
Mhm.
remember when the sequels came out, Lorena, and there was, I'm not going to call it a backlash, but people were not as excited about those sequels for a number of reasons. And after the Clone Wars, after watching it, even thought, I said, yeah, this has a different feel to it. Does it kind of explain a lot of how we got to Revenge of the Sith, so to speak? So, having all that amount of explanation and storyline and character development and battles and understanding of the Force and characters introduced, gee, Lorena, it's a huge undertaking. The fact that Filoni did this is like a showcase of everything he knows and wants us to see about Ahsoka, but it was not necessarily, I think, explained. In fact, a lot of people are saying, well, is this really the world between worlds? Like, where exactly is this taking place? As you said, there was some
Mhm.
confusion. Even I wondered, well, it looks like those platforms from the world between worlds, but where is she really? Because there's a scene where one of the characters says, "Well, I can hear lightsabers. Can't you hear that?" And I'm like, "Well, when you're in the world between worlds, I don't think anybody can really hear you while you're in the world between worlds."
No, and that's another that's a, like a technical nit that I noticed. I'm just like, I that's not how the force works. But to your point about with all of this about the Clone Wars and Rebels, and this is what I tell people when I explain Star Wars and why some people are just like, no, I just don't get it. Peace, I'm out. Whenever you're going to integrate something with Star Wars or put the Star Wars name on it, whether it's the EU novels, whether it's a comic, whether it's something like um, the Clone Wars, because there's two. There's Gennady Tartakovsky's version, which I did watch, and Dave Filoni's version in Rebels. In order for that to make sense, that needs to tie back directly to what I call the essential level of canon. The essential level of canon for me are the first 6 movies. Now, if you want to include the sequels, okay, include the sequels, but at the same time, don't retcon the sequels when you're doing stuff like this. Because that's another thing that some people have told me who have watched Rebels are like, how did this what does happen here? What happened here? So while I can give Filoni kudos for trying to do this, at the same time, he's violating parts of his own canon. And when you're doing that, and also violating things that don't really accurately trace back to the movies, that's where the backlash and the dichotomy starts, or where that's essentially where it stems from. Because I think some people would give the sequel trilogy more leeway if it made sense and you didn't have to go back and watch other shows in order to understand it. Like I had said on Twitter, not to be long-winded, but I probably will be because that's how I do. Um, you should not have to watch the Clone Wars or Rebels to understand Ahsoka. It should be written in order to introduce you. That's like saying, well, you have to watch the first Godfather movie in order to understand Godfather 2. That's bad writing if you don't write it so that people can understand what it is that you're seeing.
Yeah, exactly, Lorraine. And I'm just flipping through some of these incredible visuals. That the video in this episode is as incredible as the visuals we saw. This might be some of the best visuals I've ever seen in a Star Wars production. It's incredible what Filoni was able to recreate. We saw Death Watch Mandalorians, at least I think that's what it is, what they are. We saw the
Mhm.
clones. We saw Ahsoka, and here, of course, confronting Anakin. There were two kind of interesting things about this episode that I thought was going to happen. The first thing I thought was maybe she was seeing Anakin because she needed to ask him, how am I going to defeat Thrawn in this? This is like one of the most important battles. I don't want there to be another war.
Right,
What do we
right.
do? And I thought maybe that's what was going to happen here. And maybe this might be his Force ghost or something.
Mhm.
And the reason behind that is because she does have such a formidable foe with Thrawn. Like he's not a walk in the park. And now
Mhm.
she's got Elspeth and Hottie and Balin there. Come on, like those are very tough people to defeat. She doesn't even have Sabine. Let's say Sabine may or may not have her back. We don't even know what's going on with Sabine. So,
Right.
she ran to get her man. So, Sabine's off doing whatever she's got to do, and that's fine. But I did think it was very interesting. And the other thing that I was going to mention is I didn't know that Ahsoka had this inner conflict because, to be honest with you, it was never indicated that she had this. I mean, in one of the last seasons of the Clone Wars, she talks
Uh-huh.
about being a soldier for a good portion of her life. But gee, it's like
Mhm.
20 years later now. So I didn't know that she had this inner conflict. She did there was a book called Ahsoka. There's no inner conflict really there. And it's like this was kind of something that I was surprised to see, and I'm glad
Mm.
she dealt with it. I didn't know that she had personal demons. We all knew that she was a child soldier, like maybe not all of the Jedi, probably hardly any of them. She was very special, and she got to have this badass apprentice, Anakin, who also did not want an apprentice. So I think it's really funny how we seeing two people who end up with Padawans, and they don't
Mhm.
really want to be doing this job. And I'm thinking to myself, should we be forcing people to teach other people when they don't really want to be doing this? Like, can
Right.
we please address this? Supposedly she was supposed to be Kenobi's Padawan, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong on this. But she ended up being Anakin's Padawan, which is okay. But how many people do you have to force into training somebody else when it's not really their passion or anything they want to do? But I guess you have to do what the temple tells you to do if you are part of this organization. You're part of the group, so you have to do
Mhm.
this. And so we see her as a child, and as I said, that young woman who plays that role is spectacular. She's amazing. Hayden Christensen looked good. He didn't look as young as I guess he would have been. And I'm not necessarily going to hold them to that, because this is a dream. It feels like it's really in her head, although people are saying it's the world between worlds. And Lorena, you were right. No sooner had we seen the World Between Worlds pop up than I see a video. I'm not going to say which network it is, because I love these guys, but it's
Mhm.
literally said, "Is Dave Filoni going to retcon the sequels?" And I just knew right there. I said, "This is why I always get concerned for the community, because there were so many people holding on to that tight, Lorena. They were holding on to it so much that this World Between Worlds was going to deliver this, kind of like pullback of these movies. And
Mhm.
this entire episode had absolutely nothing to do with the sequels. They didn't even necessarily talk about anything like that. At least I don't think so. But
Mm-mm.
I was concerned because of how upset people were that they
Mm.
imagined that this World Between Worlds, I guess it could still happen, but I don't think so, was going to
Nah.
fix. It's going to fix everything. And look, we're there. And is it going to be retcon? And I'm thinking to myself, there's so much emphasis on wanting to kind of like erase those movies, that there's not any forethought towards going forward. And because of that, I really was not fond of the World Between Worlds when I first saw it. I still am not fond of that. I thought honestly that he was going to tell her something very important to get her through this, because I didn't believe, Lorena, I don't know about you,
Mhm.
but watching these few episodes, of Ahsoka, did you believe that she had a loss of faith, that she was just going to give up? I mean, she looked like she was fighting for her life. She hurt her hand on the podium, Lorena, and then she was still fighting back. And this is the part that I kind of like, when Balin's like whipping her with a lightsaber, and she's like, "Screw that! I'm still going to fight back. I don't care." Shh, like she was hardcore. I didn't feel like she gave up. Did you believe that she had this inner conflict all along?
No, and I fault that on the part of bad writing, because one of bad writing and directing, because they're both gonna go hand in hand here. One of the things that I said about Ahsoka, the first episode, and Rosario Dawson is an extremely talented actress. Why are we getting monotone from her? Why are we hardly getting any kind of emotional reaction from her? And of course, some people are like, well, Ben Kenobi did. I said, even when he did, you could still tell when things affected him. Like when Alderaan, blew up, you could tell how badly that affected him and how hard that shook him. And with Ahsoka, you weren't given any clues. No, like, say, flashbacks, just things she regretted, with Sabine, with flashbacks from the Clone Wars of like, what if I did this? What if I didn't do this, instead? Okay, you don't have time to think right now, but we should think about this right now. There were no hints or breadcrumbs to that conflict. So when you're talking about the hero's journey, so to speak, and it's pretty obvious Ahsoka is in that role, you have to show the hero's journey. There are no shortcuts through the hero's journey. And when you do shortcuts like that, and you have this episode show up, it's just like, who flipped the switch on directing, Ahsoka? And it's like, has she been asleep for 4 episodes? And then all of a sudden, all of this happens, and it really does a disservice to exactly what you said. It's just like, I didn't know she had this like inner conflict. It wasn't, I thought she might have had some kind of inner conflict, but this confirmed it. And those are two different things. And it sounds like to you, and kind of like what I saw as well, that it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it really did. And like you said, if they had given us breadcrumbs, if she was waking up in cold sweats, seeing, dead bodies in a field somewhere, then we would be like, "Oh, what was that?
Hmm.
What was
Yeah.
that?" And then
Exactly.
anybody who's watching this is like, well, she's dreaming about dead bodies in a field, and it looked like it was a battlefield, and this is very bad. I can see why she's got these issues from the beginning. I think that needed to kind of been put in there. And then
Mhm.
it would gradually, you'd get to this point, you'd be like, oh, that's what all this was about. That's how we got here. And it
Mhm.
makes sense there. And, she does have some conversations with Anakin. And because they have incredible on-screen chemistry, just as characters, and of course Hayden, I think
Mhm.
honestly this was an excellent opportunity to see Hayden here
Oh, yeah.
with her, and
Mhm.
they were just so incredible, so much chemistry. It was actually kind of cute. There were some parts, even though they were fighting a war, where they're together, and I'm like, this is adorable, this is kind of adorable. I'm like, but it did kind of take you away from, oh yeah, we're here to stop a war against Thrawn. I forgot about that. It did
Yeah.
remove me from this, and I'm not going to say that considerable effort was not used to put this together. This took so much effort, Lorena. We could see it looks like Star Wars. Like, this looks like Star Wars. There's no doubt about that. It was just the placement and the timing of it all. And I remember, I think I told you last week, I said, I hope they don't spend the next episode focusing on this place where she seems trapped or wherever it is, and of course they did. So
Mhm.
now we're at episode, is it going to be episode
6.
6? So there's 3 episodes left. We haven't seen
Mhm.
what we kind of were told we were going to see, which was, let's say, Ezra and Thrawn, like what we were kind of hinted at seeing from the get-go. So, I kind of think that was one part. But we also saw these Purgles, these whales, these space whales that we've been seeing
Mhm.
throughout the series and throughout Star Wars. We saw a little bit of them in light. I guess it's like while you're in the stream of hyper, the hyper stream, Grogu got to see them kind of flying around, and it's like,
Yeah, and that made sense because remember, not to interrupt you, but remember when we were watching that, and the first thing I said was, "Is can Grogu see them because he's that strong in the Force that he can see them?" And you were like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, that's how you do things because you tie it back to the original films with the concept of the Force and the fact that Grogu not only it's not that he can see them, he sees them. Like
yeah,
it's not some passing thing. It's like I have to pay attention to this. This is like I'm drawn to this." So it's like that was done, that was done perfectly in The Mandalorian.
it was done perfectly in The Mandalorian, and at no point did we ever think he was going to interfere with them. We didn't get that. He just happened to see
Right.
something, and we were like, "Oh, that must be about the Ahsoka series coming up."
Mhm.
And I thought that that was a very clever way to introduce them. And of course, on this planet, where everybody is, I guess the whole gang is now. The Purgles are in the atmosphere. They're flying around, and I think a lot of people were asking this question. Although I didn't ask this question because I felt like I knew the answer, but a lot of people were like, well, why don't they just take the Purgles and go to see where everybody is? And that required an explanation because nobody said anything about it. Nobody said, well, you can't just take the Purgles wherever you want to. You have to go with the will of the Force. And I kind of said the writing was really critical here because when
Mhm.
Ahsoka gets, after she has this experience and they pick her up, she ends up, we hear Balin talk about how important it is that you end up, the calculations are correct, or else you can end up in the void in space. And
Mhm.
he's like, and
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Elspeth, but I don't want to end up in the void of space. You can end up wherever you want to, but you're not taking me to the void of space. It sounds terrible. Wherever it is, it might be something like Voyager, where they're trapped for 20 years and they can't, get to where they need to go. But my point is, that I thought it was really interesting because
Mhm.
when she comes back from this big experience, when Ahsoka comes back from the big experience, she sees the Purgles, and of course now the Purgles can take her. Now they can take her, and I'm
Mhm.
like, somebody's got to be wondering, why didn't she just go ahead and use the Purgles just and follow them immediately? Like, why was there hesitation from this? But she had to have this journey. She had to have this experience. They wanted her to have this. And the weirdest part was her expression when she gets back into the cockpit and Huang is there. And Huang is like,
Mhm.
well, where are we going? And her response
Right.
is, I don't know. And I thought to myself, I'm like, excuse me? Why are you saying you don't know? Like, if you're saying you don't know, why not say something more profound like, well, it's the will of the force will take us where we need to go? Because once people like, I don't know, it could be anywhere. It reminded me
Mhm.
of Ray when people ask her, how did you learn how were you able to do all these things of the force? And she goes,
Yeah.
I don't know. And I'm like, that writing is exactly the type of stuff that makes us question whether the writer believes in the mythos. Say something
Yes.
profound, like it's the will of the force, or I've gone through my journey and I finished my training and now I see. Go ahead and say those things, but the I don't know kind of trivialize it. Yeah, you know where you're going. You're going someplace you've never been before, and it's going to be the
Mhm.
most incredible experience of your life. Say that. Or, Huang is like, well, I've never traveled to this area of the galaxy before, but it will be a fantastic time, or whatever, something clever that Huang could say. But
Yes.
they robbed us of that fun part. The Purgles were kind of anticlimactic because they've been just hanging out there. Like, are you guys going to
Mhm.
come with us or what? Like it's kind of like, I mean, like they're floating around and looking all cool. And I'm like, would somebody hop a ride with these Purgles already? You're going to ride one of them. But the weird part was that they left Hera and her kid behind. Are you surprised that they didn't go on that journey?
Honestly, this sounds bad, but it's true. I just didn't care. At that point, I had actually completely forgotten about them because as you said, the whole, "I don't know, are you kidding me? No, 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 no. It can be, I'm not sure, but something in the force is telling me X, Y, and Z. There needs to be some gravitas to that." And it wasn't. So it's like, well, shoot, if you don't know, why the heck should I even bother keeping watching? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I mean, Huang is the one who I kind of think would have been interesting for if this whole episode was told from his point of view, because as you know, the droids are the ones who are the keepers of the book. They keep the
Exactly.
mystery. And I'm like, if
Exactly.
this was told from Huang's point of view, we get a very different type of story because he would be the one kind of explaining all this stuff. I don't know every detail. And guys, if this is not we're doing a kind of like a constructive criticism of the show. We know that there are people
Exactly.
who love the show, and we're very happy for you if you love the show. There are people who didn't love it. We understand it's not about whether you loved it or not. We're pointing out some things that we notice about the show that are we feel are confusing and
Yeah,
make
and
them a
they're
little bit better.
technical issues because tell people if you and I've said this before, if you love this show, you love this show. Don't let anybody tell you different. If you don't like this show, you don't like this show. Don't let anybody tell you different. But for the both of us as reviewers, we have to go with the objective stuff and the technical things that are tangible that compared to other things, that don't mesh. And when it comes to storytelling as a medium, there's several places in this where the ball was dropped. I mean, I can just think of how just with the simple Cliff Notes version of what happened with Rebels
Yeah.
and with Clone Wars, that it could have brought folks up to speed and they wouldn't have to, because it's not their job to go back and watch something else to fill in your blanks and everything. But also the quality of the people who do love Rebels. When I hear people who are like, I've been a fan of the Rebels, and I'm just like, what the heck are they trying to do, you know, in this show?
Yeah, and I'm almost wondering whether this personal issue that she had could have happened a little bit earlier. And
Mhm.
certainly I get it. This is a climactic moment. They've shot away, but when you think about it, this is not the time for her to kind of like be pausing and having these, vision quests. This stuff should have happened earlier when she had a little bit more time in the episodes, or maybe when she hit that first temple. I
Mhm.
know they wanted Balin to kind of bait her and say that she did a bad job and all that sort of stuff. But somehow they could have switched it around so that that came up a little bit earlier. In fact,
Mhm.
Shin Hati could have been the one, and then like, yeah, we know all about your master and her, her bad
Mhm.
your when your master was an apprentice or something, and that could have shaken Sabine, and Sabine would be like, well, I didn't know all the details of that stuff, and could have put a little bit of even more tension between Sabine and Ahsoka in a sense. And Ahsoka's like,
I
hey,
agree.
you don't know all the details, and then they could have rode with it then. And that could have been a very
Mhm.
interesting thing at that point when we're kind of like just having them sit in a room looking at glasses. There could have been that explanation at that point. And then people, when they got to this episode, wouldn't have wondered what was going on. You would have gotten in
Mm,
there, and then there would have been this, oh gosh,
yeah.
look at how crazy that is. So that's some of the things that I think, if it were me, I would have done it a little differently. And of course, Chompers was his normal wonderful self. He's been this
I
way.
love Chopper. Where's Lothcat daggone it? He's my boy.
I think the lost cat might have crawled in somewhere. Who knows? All I know is that I just love when they went back to when Ahsoka went back to Ezra's house, and the lost cat is waiting
Okay.
outside, because that's exactly what a cat would do. The cat is
Yes.
like, I can't go in there. I'm just gonna
Mhm.
wait out here until these humans go ahead,
Mhm.
or in the case of Ahsoka, whomever
Mhm.
goes ahead and takes care of the business, because she's like, the cat is waiting outside. We know that the cat is outside for a reason. So,
Yeah.
but it is very interesting. And I also think that this challenge of this show was not anything, I think, for what it is. It does look like Ahsoka's show now. It doesn't feel as if it's a different person's show. And for a while, we felt like it was Sabine's show or someone else's show.
Yes.
But after this episode, like I said, if we gotten this episode somewhat closer to the forefront of the beginning of the series, it would be a very different
Mhm.
feel to the series. So there was that. But yeah, it was very anticlimactic when they got on the Purgles. They got in, so they got pushed away, but it didn't have that
Right.
splendor that it could have had with the Purgles. And I certainly know that this is the only option. Like, I get it. There was no other way to follow them, but and certainly it makes sense that they go with them, but I'm not quite sure whether the fantasy of the Purgles still has that awe to it, because of how they were also handled here in the past two episodes. What do you think, Lorena? Are you amazed and fascinated by the Purgles, the whales, the space whales?
No, because they look too much like the sandworms in Dune.
Mhm.
Just same mythos, because when we see the sandworms in Dune, they're very majestic. They're very, weighty. They have you cannot help but stop and watch. And there's actually a part in episode 5 where Ahsoka's standing outside, and sure enough, one of the space whales rises up just like one of the sandworms in Dune, same kind of teeth. And I'm just like, is she gonna ride one of those? That's the exact thought that I had. I'm like, is she gonna ride one of those like Paul Atreides? So it was just, it's almost like, compared with the way that the space whales were shown and just the mythical manner that they were shown, that there was some higher purpose. And it felt like a letdown to me, which is a shame, because with that, with what they gave us in The Mandalorian, that little, detail, um, I was expecting more than I got, and it's a shame, because it is a beautiful shot, but it's kind of like, why?
Yeah, this is some of the most beautiful production shots I've ever seen in my entire life. And this must have looked incredible on the screen. This must have been remarkable. And I
Mhm.
almost wanted to challenge them. It's like, why not go ahead and say we're going to show 10 showings of this the following day, and you guys can pay for those showings? Like, I would have paid for it. I would have watched this in a theater because of the way it looked on my television. I'm like, this is remarkable. The beauty of these shots, are perfection. And of course, because they're from the Clone Wars and Rebels and whatever other conflicts, which were also very well made animated scenes. Lorena, here we got a Death Watch Mandalorian, which I'm assuming it is a Death Watch Mandalorian. You can see the influences of Darth Maul's influence on them with the horns from Darth Mirian's, but on a Mandalorian helmet. That was
Mhm.
cool to see something like that, but it was also very terrifying in the sense of being in this constant conflict. So but it is what it is. And now we have a new episode. And Lorena, are we actually going to see Grand Admiral Thrawn and Ezra in this next episode? Because I'm having my doubts. What if it gets to the end and we just kind of see them turn around and that's the end of the series?
if Filoni waits until the end to show them, I don't care whether you're a Rebels fan or not. If I was a Rebels fan, I'd be freaking pissed. Why do I have to wait this long? Where's the big baddie? Where's the baddie that we know Thrawn is? Where the heck is he? So I do hope it, and it almost seems like it's kind of suffering from what happened with the Mandalorian season 2 and season 3, where near the end of the season they hit the gas so hard that it's just like you can't keep up. So I really do hope that they will introduce Thrawn sooner rather than the last episode, because I think if they leave him until the last episode, nobody's gonna be happy.
Yeah, what if it's just that scene where he's on the the ship's excuse me, if he's on the bridge of the ship and that's it. It's engage engines, zoom, and then that's
Yeah.
and then it's Ahsoka season 1, the end, and then you're just like, okay. Also, I want to see Sith Daddy again. Of course, I'm talking about Balin.
Oh, yes, I do. I tell you, he is one of the reasons why I am, besides having to review it, my personal interest in watching the show. This just the Sith Daddy.
Well, Sith Daddy and of course Hadi are two of the most interesting characters that we've gotten so far.
This is true.
They I personally, I think that what they're doing has surprised me. And some people like the fighting, some people didn't like the fighting. Regardless, I just like Sith Daddy smack talk. And
I do too.
I'm still like in a phase of where when he closed his eyes and he's like, I read you. Now here's the tea. Now this guy I just love it. I'm kind of makes me wonder, and this is really the last question. We'd go on to some other topics here. I'm
Hmm.
wondering, Lorena, he seems to have a very, very good ability to read somebody. And smack talk, we do hear that a lot from Sith users. But do all
Hmm.
Force users have this? This is just a hypothetical question. Do all Force users have it, but they keep to themselves like, oh, you what? Okay, I won't tell anybody. Just don't tell everybody my secrets, and I won't tell yours. So our Sith users the opposite. They're like, we got all the tea on you. They're like, if they had the ability, they'd be on YouTube and be like, let me tell you all the tea on this person. Like they would.
Hmm.
What do you think?
There's definitely something to it, with what I remember from the dark side. It's more tapped into emotion. As say with Jedi, there's emotion, but they're more leaning towards logic. Kind of like the difference between Romulans and Vulcans, kind of like that. So when you are an emotional person, especially the Sith, you are emotionally manipulative. We've seen this. We got hints of this with Vader when we saw him, how he would use his voice, how he would speak to people, different ways that he would phrase things. He wasn't in a hurry to talk. A lot of times you were really scared if he wasn't talking because, he trying to, choke you or something like that. But even with Palpatine, when we first see him and just how he talks and how he plants certain thoughts into Anakin's head, they're very, very seductive. Balin, he's not in a hurry, and he's using what he's saying more so than doing. So yeah, the Sith are very, very seductive, even from some of the EU novels that I've read of some of the Sith masters and Sith apprentices. They are very, very much so. And if you have not read Darth Plagueis, that's a prime example right there.
Lorena, everybody wants a Rule of Two movie made or something like that. They want this whole thing to kind of come out, and
Hmm.
it would be multiple films. It would be very dark, and I think we're kind of ready for that. Here we have one of the last pictures I want to show you. Of course, it's Hera with Ahsoka, and of course now she's no longer wearing gray robes, but she's
Hmm.
wearing white robes. What did you think about this whole thing as well, Lorena? The transformation of her now. She is.
um I thought it was unnecessary. um I would have preferred it if she had her battle scarred clothes on instead, because that tells me, you're proud of your scars. You're not trying to do this massive just transformation, let's say, from the outside. It I don't know, it didn't sit with me, and it seems like it was more you focus on what she's in, what she's wearing, rather than what she went through. And frankly, it's too much of a callback to and I've heard this comparison, and it's true, Gandalf the White.
Yeah, and of course, and I believe, and I think Darth Plato was the one who told me, and I did hear about it, and I'm sure you heard about it, that Filoni mentioned that there were some similarities, or at least he felt that there may have been some similarities between the two characters regarding their attire.
Mhm.
Of course, Gandalf goes through this very different transformation, and I'm not going to
Yeah.
try and explain all the details of how Gandalf goes from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. I'm not going
Right.
to go ahead and try and explain that to you. What I can tell you, it's a very profound, a very long journey. God, he falls for a hell of a time. This guy is falling.
Whoo! I aged.
Yeah, like he's really, this took a lot out of him. So here's this, she's supposed to look transformed and be different, and she's definitely seems more chipper, maybe. Things are a little different. Her
Yeah.
outlook on life, I guess, is different. Who knew? That she had this different outlook all along, but now she needed to do this. But certainly, I'm hoping that at some point we find out a little bit more um, about what's really going on with her. People did ask the questions like, well, what has she been up to for the past 20 years? Well, she's been fighting her ass off, saving people. That's what she's been doing. She
Mhm.
hasn't sort of like been hanging out, on Ryza. She hasn't been hanging out in Space Ibiza or Namos, just kind of enjoying herself and doing whatever she wants to do. She's been doing anything like that. She's been saving, protecting people. So she's never really stopped this mission of caring for others. And if anything, maybe she's one of maybe several Jedi who are doing that. We saw it in Jedi Fallen Order and in Jedi Survivor, the video games. And we
Mhm.
do see that there are some Jedi, even after having the order been disbanded or leaving the order, are still doing deeds of, that are good, works that are good. And we're
Right.
seeing that. So that is good. But I guess I also want to mention, guys, that Lorraine reviews Ahsoka live on her channel. It's
Yes.
members only, but you can join and become a member of the channel and watch along with her on Tuesday night. So guys, maybe you want to check that out and subscribe to Lorraine's channel so you can watch it going forward. Tomorrow is another episode, everybody.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So that's coming up. But I talked about the games, and of course there were characters in a lot of these Star Wars games, and we're talking about all the way from Kotar to the Force, at least everything, all the way up to, let's say, my most recent favorite, which is of course Jedi Survivor, which I played on my channel and I enjoyed it a lot. It's a great
Mhm.
game, but I'm kind of bringing up gaming because I'm not going to say it's out of nowhere. I'm not going to say that, and this might be the last topic that we even talk about. And I promise I wasn't necessarily going to talk too much about the strike that's going on right now, because believe it or not, some of us are in unions where we're showing solidarity for that. And as a consequence of that, like many of us can't really say very much. But I was very surprised to see, gosh, can I open this now? Yes, I can. I was very surprised to see that even video games can't escape this strike. And of course, they're heavy, really heavy in, voiceover actors, big deal. Like they're
Mhm.
huge. And, of course, everybody wants to see the characters from a lot of the games of the Knights of the Republic
Mhm.
games, every single one of these Star Wars games we want to see adapted into the screen. And now,
Right.
the notion, and of course, this vote is supposedly saying that at any time we can, do something or whatever the action is. But the reach of this strike has been quite expansive, Lorena. Like it seems like whenever there's an opportunity, we're going to expand on it, and we're going to, even people who are allowed to work are suddenly not allowed to work. We're seeing a lot of kind of rulings and then overturnings of rulings. This is turning into something that is quite a big web, and I'm using a web in the sense of the reach of everything that it's touching. Um,
Mhm.
They say they've got negotiations on Wednesday. Lorena, is this even going to come to fruition? And who else do you think would be affected by this?
Wow. Definitely, definitely the voice actors. And there are several, and we've talked about some of them on a Toxic Male Appreciation, who have lent their voices to certain video games to the point where their voices are synonymous with, with the character
Mhm.
in the video game industry. I don't even know if, and this is probably something maybe someone more in the gaming industry would know, is does that fall under, SAG rules if you're doing voiceover work for, say a video game company in the UK, like say a video game company that has offices, worldwide. Does Rockstar Games have to abide by that? Does oh my gosh, does Epic Games, do they have to abide by that? But looking at looking at this, I have to be blunt. You came after the nerds, so y'all have done really messed up here. Absolutely, because one, it was one thing, when it was just, film and television, and of course streaming, because that goes in there with that. But now you're trying to expand that strike, and you're trying to get we'll say the sympathies of, of Americans to sympathize, with your plight. Now you're coming after another portion of recreation with I'm not going to say fanatical, let's say extremely passionate. Gamers are very passionate. You and I are gamers. We're very, very, very passionate about this type of thing. So now they want to strike, or let's put it this way, authorize a strike against video game companies. And this is just me, but between AI and between non-union talent who could probably recreate those voices, or even better, just start from scratch, I think SAG's going to wind up shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, it is a huge issue here, and I think that if it continues, if this umbrella continues, because the umbrella is continuing in areas that, let's say, were not on the table, like these guys, they were not on the table during
Hmm.
the strike initially. No one had considered even looking there. So now all of a sudden they're expanding, and they're overturning people who have gotten the okay to work, they've given permission. You've been given permission by the union to go ahead and work. And now, people are feeling bullied into not working. And there's no
Yeah.
way to it's that's no other way to put it. It was right. It was bullying a person who
Hmm.
is trying to keep their business alive. And it's not just for their livelihood, but the livelihood of, the domino effect in the industry. And now we're seeing, pretty much shows that I thought that were unscripted, or yeah, right? They're unscripted shows now are all falling into this category where pretty much everything might shut down. What if they come after YouTube, Lorena?
Well, you know what? In a way, they are. From what I was able to see on Clownfish TV, what they were talking about is oh, well, you have to support the strike because, if you're a YouTuber, if ever you want to, get into SAG or AFTRA, you better support the strike, or else, you know what? Guess you're probably not going to be able to, you know, be part of, the talent in Hollywood, which is very attractive given some influencers that are out there, and there's some of them who are, supporting the strike. I think with respect to YouTubers, we're probably going to get even more popular right now. We're not beholden to a union for what it is, that we want to do. YouTube is a shareholder held company. So there are no contracts really with Sagar after. So honestly, I just believe YouTube is going to be even more popular. YouTube, TikTok, forget Facebook. Nobody's looking at Facebook, but nobody's looking at Facebook. But I'm gonna say YouTube and TikTok. They're going to be even more popular, and the studios are already taking. I mean, every time I look at Netflix, I'm seeing more and more foreign um, movies and televisions that look good. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and watch that. It's not the playing field isn't the way that it was years ago. So I really think that SAG and AFTRA and even the WGA, they are in for a rude awakening. This is not. They don't have the bargaining power that they think they have, and the studios, they are not in a hurry. They're not in a hurry at all, and it seems like for us, just regular people out here, it's just like I can go watch YouTube.
Yes, and and as you already know, Lorena, there are some YouTubers who are a registered part of the union, and this was something that came up a few years ago with their ability to go ahead and register, and may not be SAG, but it could be one of the unions that fall under the umbrella of this strike. And so, it is quite a thought. And as you mentioned before, Clownfish TV has talked about the notion of, well, is it going to affect people on YouTube, especially influencers who are on every day and all this sort of stuff. So I put up John Cipola's comment because I just love this. He says he's
Which
happy to
one?
go back to 70s and 90s video game coin operated games.
I know the value of a dollar 4 quarters.
That's right. I know, like a Dragon's Lair, it costs $1 to just go for one time. Um, and
Ah,
Lorraine, you pointed out, it
yes.
turns out they do have an interactive contract with a video game company.
Yes, they do. I just looked that up. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think it is really important to note that, and it is something that we're all thinking about, and of course,
Mhm.
something to consider, because I would say maybe, not everybody on this channel, but there are some channels of people who are working actors, voice actors, and how would that
That is
affect
true.
them going forward? So it's something to
Mhm.
think about. And I'm sure no one was thinking about this, but goodness gracious, I hope Wednesday's negotiations go well and we don't even have to think about this anymore, Lorena, going forward. Now,
Hmm.
Lorena, where can people find you?
Well, folks, you can find me, of course, on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter, and you can find me on YouTube, being myself and telling it like it is and running the show because it is my show to run. Uh, of course, you can check out my channel for such shows as Toxic Male Appreciation, which is on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on Twitch with her. So you can catch that then. Let's see, what day is it? Okay, so tomorrow, Tuesday, 2 live streams from me. I'm going to be playing more of Disney Dreamlight Valley. Going to be doing some Halloween decorating in the Forbidden Land. No, the Forgotten Lands, because I am constructing a villains bar to put up there, so you can come see me
Ooh.
put that together. And 8:55 p.m. Eastern, your girl will be doing a watch party for episode 6 of Ahsoka for members. So we have that going on. Let's see, my goodness. Thursday, no, tomorrow, Wednesday, Dark Council, which is going to be on Abu Nas's channel. So
Oh,
go
right.
and check that out. Yes, yes, with the 6-man team and me cracking the whip behind the scenes. And Thursday, Talks My Appreciation. And at 6 o'clock, I will be over on WDW Pro Live's channel over there, keeping you ahead of the culture curve and also contributing to that park place. And of course, Saturday morning, live streaming from the Magic Kingdom. There's so much fall fun and energy in the air, even though it's hot as I don't know what outside. So we're going to enjoy the fall decorations, check out the fall merchandise, and the fall disrespectful treats that are there.
Oh gosh, there's so many goodies to look forward to, Lorena. And guys, as you know, you can find me on my channel, Positive Fandom, where I do all the parlay in the fandom. I have my Sunday brunch show on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. in the morning. You can also find me here on the Burr Network, where I do the show here with Lorena, Ladies of the PGS,
Mhm.
on Mondays nights at 6 p.m. Lorena and I also do a number of watch parties together as well.
Mhm.
So keep in mind, we have that coming up. I'm going to be doing more shows on The Crown. The final season of The Crown, Lorena, is coming
When
up.
does that start?
I don't know, but you and I will be watching that together, everybody. Lorena
Oh,
and I will be
shoot.
watching that. Yes.
Yeah.
We're doing a watch party that I'm also going to be looking at, I believe, what might be the final season of SEAL Team, a television show with Jason Boreanaz that I've been watching for a very long time. That's coming up. We also have
Mm.
Napoleon. I do my, which I do with Darth Plato, this historical film series on Thursdays, right after Toxic Male Appreciation.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And of course, Midnight Musings. And I promise you guys, October, I'm going to pick a game and start playing again. Uh, if I can figure out my computer situation. So that's coming up. But I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson, guys. Tom Jr. Jackson, a moderator, collaborator.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, good friend, Tom Jr. Jackson. Thank you for everything. Guys, make sure you like and subscribe to Tom's YouTube channel. He just
Mhm.
had a review, I believe it was the day before yesterday. So you do want to check that out. And I want to thank everybody who is here on the PGS supporting the show. Hope everybody is having a
Mm.
great day. It's a little cold in New York. I'm not ready for the winter. I'm still in shorts and a t shirt. So, I'm not, fall is not happening yet for me, but that's okay. Just want to thank
Of
everybody
course.
for tuning in. I hope everybody is
Mhm.
doing well. And guys, remember, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind.
Bye.